Hello, Pauper fans. This is Mathonical, and you are joining me for round 5 of the Pauper Challenge from October the 29th. Our opening hand is a reasonable keep. We've got some early interaction with a Disfigure, Prismatic Strands to stop any kind of like aggro style deck, and a Guardian that we would like to get down. Enough lands to cast it all, so we're going to just go ahead and keep this. Our opponent does mulligan to 6, which may bode well for us. We will find out. Swiftwater Cliffs means they may be playing on some version of Izzet Blitz. And these cards reinforce the idea of Izzet Blitz. Our hand isn't that great versus Izzet Blitz if they have some way of protecting themselves versus our Disfigure or Prismatic Strands or something of that effect. And if they have a Nivix Cyclops, we can't kill it with a Disfigure either. Augur of Bolus gets them a Gush. That is not the greatest for us. Gush will allow them to get a lot of cards. Pestilence is nice, except we don't have a second black source to get it online. So we're just going to go ahead and get our Palace Sentinels down. We would like to draw additional cards to try and flesh out our hand. Our opponent does go with the Gush and gets into Big Cyclops. We are not able to disfigure that. So basically we're just hoping that the Prismatic Strands is enough to keep us alive. And until we can get something else going on, of course. Our opponent is going ahead and pondering, getting their Nivix Cyclops into attack, and are going to get Taxium Probe. So they're going to be able to see our hand and try and get in for some damage. I'm just going to throw the Thraben Inspector. I end up switching around because I want to try and use the Disfigure on the Nivix Cyclops. I end up trying to disfigure the Kiln Fiend just because it can attack either way. Ends up that they had a Mutagenic Growth player on the Disfigure either way, so it didn't really work out for us. We're just going to bounce the Thraben Inspector, and we're basically priced into using this Prismatic Strands. Go ahead and discard one of them, just so we have multiples online without having to keep mana open in the future. And I believe, right about here, I do make a mistake. I believe I should block the Kiln Fiend and then use the Prismatic Strands Pro Blue to prevent him from getting the Monarch. But I was trying to see if I'd get any additional cards out of him before using it. Because I do know I have this Palace Sentinel to get online, but this does leave me fairly low on Prismatic Strand effects. That was the other reason why I didn't use it. I was kind of hoping to just kind of keep more of them, like I wanted to keep one available without, so that way I could still tap out and play to the board at some amount. And I knew I was going to get the Monarch right back, but I think the additional card for them is more valuable than the play that I made. Here I'm forced to use the Prismatic Strands, and if they have a counterspell, we basically lose. And it turns out they do. So we do lose this first game. A little unfortunate, but I feel like I probably could have played that better. I was a little tight on lands and ended up playing not the optimal line. Going into game 2, I do have this, this is why I have the Doomblades in the deck and in the sideboard. I feel like you absolutely need that kind of effect versus Izzet Blitz. You just want to be able to try and kill as many creatures as possible early on. So, the normal sideboard plan of taking in a couple Palace Sentinels, they've got a lot of unblockable type effects, and I don't want to be having to fight over the Monarchy in that kind of situation. I also take out the Night's Whispers because I don't want to be taking a turn off just to draw additional cards. Take out a couple Aven Riftwatcher. If you gain a little bit of incremental life in this matchup, it doesn't help you that much. And it may end up turning it into a bit of like a stall fest at some point, so gaining the additional life and having them leave the battlefield at some point isn't that ideal. So in those places, we're going to bring in the Duresses, or 2 of them, just to try and pick out some of their pieces. We're going to bring in the 2 Doomblades to kill their creatures, and the 2 Coalition Honor Guards, so that way their various unblockable effects and Temur Battle Rage cannot target their own creatures. And that is how we're going to play it in this one. Taking a look at our opening hand is okay. We do have the Pestilence to get online. We have Wall of Hope and a Thraben Inspector. So I can't really remember if I keep this. This is something I'd be very on the fence about, and it would basically depend on my mood. I think looking at it now, I'd be leaning towards sending it back. I would want interaction, but I do keep it. Basically, if I'm keeping this, I'm looking to scour Barrens, get the Thraben Inspector online, draw the additional card. I can also drop a Wall of Hope while dropping like a second Baron here. Yeah. So the main game plan with this hand is hoping that we don't get run over on the second or third turn. We've passed that one, and now we're just looking to get this Pestilence down at some point to lock out creatures going forward. Getting the Prismatic Strands is excellent. That will give us some ways of protecting ourselves versus him trying to combo off in the near future. When he sees that we don't have any removal spells in hand, he goes ahead and just runs out the Kiln Fiend, which is completely reasonable. And that means that we do have to just play the Wall of Hope, and hope is good enough, and get the Prismatic Strands online. I'm not going to block here. Basically, I'm just trying to force him into doing something to use this Prismatic Strands. He ends up trying to bolt one of our creatures, which basically means we get even more value out of our Prismatic Strands. I'm very happy about that. I feel like he should have just let the damage happen and tried to bolt it afterwards, but perhaps he has some methodology for the line he took. Now that we have Prismatic Strands in the graveyard, I can be a bit more liberal with tapping out our mana. And we're just going to basically try and get additional clues with the Core Skyfisher, get our land drops, and cycle our Ash Barrens. We want to get as many black sources as possible. Now we've got a lot of options for next turn. We can hold up Prismatic Strands, or we can play the Pestilence, depending on how things look. I'm going to put multiple creatures in front of the Kiln Fiend here because I want him to spend additional effects to try and kill our creatures off. And I'm only really going to cash in the Prismatic Strands if I absolutely need to. We end up gaining a bit of extra life off of the Wall of Hope. He should have put it in the other order. We ended up getting 5 life off the Wall of Hope. He should have allocated the 5 or the 4 to the Skyfisher, but just letting you guys know, so you guys know for the future in case that weird interaction comes up. Here he's going for some damage with a Lightning Bolt to our creature again, so we're just going to cash in a Prismatic Strands. We're using the one from hand because we want multiple into the graveyard so we can tap out when we want to. And now we're just looking to get our Pestilence online at some point. We're basically daring our opponents to try and go for a Team or Battle Rage. They don't, so we don't cash in one of the Prismatic Strands. Drawing the Skyfisher means I want to do the Thraben Inspector bounce and get some additional card draw going on. I don't feel like getting the Pestilence down right then was the best option. They sometimes have some counter spells, although I don't think they'd have one for Pestilence, but I'd mainly want to be able to play the Pestilence and wipe the board all in one turn, if possible. He doesn't attack. That's making me think he's a fairly weak hand if he doesn't want to lose his Kiln Fiend to the Skyfisher. I go ahead and Doomblade it, and that does stick, so now I'm just going to get the Pestilence down on the board, so that way I can kill lots of creatures going forward. I cash in the Chainer's Edict just to start chipping away at some of his creatures. I don't want to be using the Pestilence for 3 here unless I absolutely need to, because I do want to keep Pestilence on the board. Now that he's a Nivix Cyclops, I may have to cash it in for 4, and then bounce it with the Core Skyfisher, but drawing the Honor Guard gives me the opportunity to not have to worry about a Team or Battle Rage killing us. He basically needs to have 2 Lightning Bolts to remove our Coalition Honor Guard at this point. And we're just going to Core Skyfisher, bounce Thraben Inspector, and get additional card draw going on. It turns out our opponent has a Gush. That is a lot of additional card draw, so there's chances of him getting a Lightning Bolt at some point. He reveals a Flaring Pain with the Augur, so we do have to be careful of that if we're trying to go for some kind of Prismatic Strands effects. I'm just going to throw our Thraben Inspector under the bus to gain us a bit of additional life. And we're just going to continue to basically draw a card with the Clue, play Low Missionary, gain additional life. We're trying to get him for some damage. And we're basically looking to win next turn with the Art Flyers and the Pestilence on the board. Since he doesn't do anything, I'm just going to go with the plan I just mentioned. Attack for 4, and we're going to activate the Pestilence for 2. That ends up being good enough to win this one. So we're just going to jump into game 3. Looking at our opening hand, it isn't the greatest hand. It's not the fastest, but we do have a Disfigure for turn 2 in case they go for the turn 2 Kiln Fiend, although it doesn't play around Mutagen Growth, not much we can do with that. It does have Duress to pick apart their hand. Prismatic Strands, if we get to turn 3 or beyond, we can have some protection effects, and a Thraben Inspector is great. So I go ahead and keep this. This hand does have some holes in it, of course, but not much we can do about that. Here we're basically just going to be looking, since he didn't play a Kiln Fiend, to Duress their hand, pick apart something out of it. Let's see. Basically, based on his hand, I go ahead and take the Relic of Progenitus. I'm going to be leaning on this Prismatic Strands pretty hard, and I want it to be able to sit in the graveyard. Since I'm going to be bouncing the land here. Yeah. As you've seen from previous games, just having this in the graveyard gives me a lot of options. So the Relic of Progenitus, just chewing away our graveyard, isn't a great plan. It also allows them to cycle for additional card later on. So while I am leaving them with a Lightning Bolt and a Team of Battle Rage, I feel like since they don't have the protection effects, the Doomblade being able to kill his Kiln Fiend, or the Disfigure, having the Prismatic Strands, all these things are great, so I don't mind just cashing in for the Relic. So now we've got our Weight Source online, so next turn we can Thraben Inspector or Disfigure if he just ends up playing the Kiln Fiend. He does not and gets a Gitaxian Probe. That is fine. We're just going to play our Thraben Inspector and play some of our tap lands. And go from there. Ends up Lightning Bolting our Thraben Inspector. I can see the reasoning. He doesn't want us to have the core Skyfisher combo going on, but we do have another Thraben Inspector in hand, so he ends up getting for 1 damage with the Augur. I guess that's fine. We're going to draw our card first, just seeing what we draw, and then we play our Thraben Inspector, Scoured Barrens to get double white online, so we have additional options. Our opponent knows that we have some removal spells, so they're not likely to play their Kiln Fiend unless they've got some kind of protection. We go ahead and block, knowing that they could cash in the Battle Rage to kill our Thraben Inspector, but I don't mind. I felt like it was a reasonable trade to see if they would waste it, and they did, so that's one less thing for me to be worried about out of their hand. So let's clean up some of this stuff. I believe all we know that we have left is the Kiln Fiend. We do have the Pestilence online, and I didn't mind running it out there, because the chance of them removing their own creature to remove it is not likely, and if they did, that's fine by us. I play out the Coalition Honor Guard. We do know that they could have 2 Lightning Bolts at some point, but that is a risk I'm willing to take. And now that we have the Guardian of the Guild Pack online, we now have the ability to Pestilence as much as we need to. And so we're just trying to get in some additional pressure by playing the core Skyfisher to get in for some damage. Playing out the Cyclops here, I'm just going to go ahead and Doomblade it. I don't want to play around with anything strange. He does go for the Apostle's Blessing. And I'm basically like, that's fine. I do have an additional removal spell. I have the Prismatic Strands. And in this case, in case he did have another way of protecting his creature, I just decide to hold up the Prismatic Strands is more important, so that's 2 protection effects instead of just 1 more interaction now. At the end of the turn, I'm going to go for the Doomblade. He does end up having the protection effect, and that's fine. We've been playing around this possibility. Duress is nice. We get to pick apart anything that's left in their hand. We take the last Battle Rage, and now we know there's just 2 Kiln Fiends in there. We're just going to go ahead and use the Disfigure on the Nivik Cyclops, use Pestilence for 2 to remove it, and now we can start getting in for some damage. Still able to hold up the Prismatic Strand, and our opponent knows that there isn't any way for him to get around this since we were able to kill any of his Kiln Fiends that he plays with Pestilence, and we're basically looking at dealing lethal damage next turn. So we are now 4-1. Join me for round 6 to see if I make it into the top 8.